and welcome to episode 7 of Wayne Seaden Presents Most Haunted Spookinori. Tonight's episode is in honour of our one and only Queen of the Paranormal, Yvette, and is titled The Camp. The four arrived at the camp just as the sun was setting. Quickly they set up their tents and Yvonne was starting a fire. She had been nominated as the camp cook, which she was happy to commit to. Carlos went off to find some wood for the fire. As a couple, Carlos and Yvonne did everything together and rarely argued. He returned with the wood just as the fire was taking hold of the kindling neatly placed in the centre. Benny was excited about the trip. He had been looking forward to this for months. He was placing all the food and drinks away in the cook's tent, and John was setting out the chairs around the campfire. Within minutes, they were all sitting around the fire with coffee in hand. Darkness now had fallen, and the night took hold of the forest. An orchestra of noises had started echoing out across the night. Being summer, the night brought out crickets and grasshoppers, and a cornucopia of noises that gave great amusement to the forest's guests as they tried to figure out what animal the noise belonged to. Suddenly there was a loud crack. "What the hell was that?" Benny shouted. "A twig," Yvonne replied. Following the snapping noise came a cough from outside the light of the campfire. "Sorry to disturb you," came a voice from the trees. "Brownies!" shouted Yvonne, and they all jumped up as a tall, ragged-looking man came walking out of the darkness. His lumberjack shirt coated in dirt and ripped in places. His shorts were torn and dirty too. "Where the hell did you come from?" Carlos asked the man. "I've been walking round for days. My name's Alan. I was filming in the forest and got lost," he replied. "Well, Alan, you're more than welcome to stay here with us until the morning," Yvonne said, calming down after the shock of Alan's arrival and handing him a cup of coffee. Yvonne could feel Ben and John's gaze upon her and knew they weren't happy with her suggestion that Alan stay till morning. Benny walked over to Carlos and Yvonne and quietly whispered, "How do you know that he won't do something while he's here?" "I'm worried," he explained. "Don't worry. 2 of us will go with him in the morning to find his camp," Carlos replied. They went to bed with the sound of night song and John snoring. Yvonne slowly drifted off, worrying about the following day. Morning broke, and they all emerged from their tents to the smell of fresh coffee. Alan was already up and had set about making breakfast for his friendly campmates. Within a short period of time, they were all dressed and chatting about what to do about the situation with Alan. After some discussion, it was agreed that they would go with him to the ranger's cabin and let them help Alan to find his camp. They washed up their plates from breakfast and packed a few bottles of water into a backpack, and all 5 set off to find the ranger. After a short walk, they found themselves back at the car park. "Glad to see my baby still here," Benny quipped, looking at his beloved truck slowly being buried in dust and various range of leaves and bird droppings. Parked nearby was the ranger's car. "There he is," pointed Carlos, and they all walked over to the ranger. The ranger was leaning on the bonnet of his car, looking at a map and coughing on a cigarette. He saw them approach and put his map down. "Can I help you?" the ranger asked. Carlos shook the ranger's hand. "Oh, yes," he said. "Can you help our friend, please?" And he turned to introduce Alan. But Alan had gone. Yvonne explained to the ranger about Alan's arrival in the camp and described him perfectly to the ranger. After hearing the tale, he pulled out his mobile phone and walked away to talk. After half an hour, Carlos and the group had been asked to stay with the ranger until some help arrived. Then rapidly racing along the dirt track to the ranger's cabin came 4 police cars. Carlos, Yvonne, Benny and John were cautioned and taken to the police station. After 2 days of questioning, they were released. They walked out to Benny's truck, which had been returned with all their equipment, and no one had said a word until they stopped at the service station for food. They sat down in a secluded part of the restaurant to eat. After a few minutes, Benny choked and pointed at the TV screen showing the news. "What the hell is that?" Benny cried. "Oh my God, it's Alan," Yvonne whimpered. On the screen was a picture of Alan. In the ticker bar at the bottom of the screen was written, "Missing filmmaker's body is found." "Holy shit, I thought I knew the face. He went missing months ago," Carlos said. They moved closer to the screen to hear what the reporter was saying. After hearing the article, they all sat down and silence hit the group. Alan had been missing for 2 months. He'd never come home and a search had commenced. No one knew where he had gone. The search continued when Carlos and the rest had camped in the area that they hadn't searched yet. Alan's badly decomposed body was found next to his camera at the bottom of a small ravine. The camera had captured the moment when he fell in and ran until the battery had died, recording Alan's final moments. "But he was there," Yvonne said as tears welled up in her eyes. "How could this be? He had coffee with us and made breakfast." Floods of tears began streaming from her face. "Alan wanted to be found," Benny replied. "He had been dead for all that time," Carlos said. Yvonne turned to look at the TV. "He was lost, but now he's found," she cried as she held on to Carlos. John turned to face the TV. "Rest in peace, Alan."